show. I paid my money, dropped it in his hat. That's when he went.
So I'm talking about these slings. We've talked about it all the time. There's all these anatomical slings, which I would also kind of use to be bands. Like think about rubber bands, slings, those kind of things. That's what I want you to be thinking about. Slingshots. So when you're doing movement, you need to load up on these slings to create more power, to generate better strength, to be more resilient, to be safer. Think about when you try to jump. Do they stand with their legs straight and then just jump up in the air? Or do they load? So that's what we're thinking about. When we load those slings, we're loading down. Why? So we can create that energy, that elasticity. So I can jump higher. What does somebody do when they try to throw a baseball or a football or any kind of implement? What do? They wind up. What are they doing? They're loading that sling. Now, we're not throwing things in the gym. We may not be jumping as much in our gym, but we can still use that same mentality to load. If we're doing something like a hip hinge, maybe a deadlift, a good morning, a kettlebell swing, when I address my implement, first thing is my feet. My feet have to root into the ground because I have to have a solid base for my sling, my spring, whatever else we're calling this. And now what I want to think about, if we're thinking about that slingshot, notice my hips. I need to bend my knees in order for my hips to be drawn back. So I'm thinking about a rubber band. I'm pulling tight on that rubber band, creating the tension here through my glutes, so that way it's not affecting my hamstrings or my low back. Everything is packed up into those glutes. And then when I stand, I don't want to stand simply by just lifting up my body. I want to press down so I can keep that energy contained within my core. Now as I drive back down, the one thing I don't want to do is collapse down. I need to make sure that I load back up that sling, that rubber band, driving the hips back, creating that tension so it's a tap, drive back down, drive it back down, and we're back up. I've got my bag on my shoulder. Now if I think about that spring underneath my hips, I need to push down. So already my feet are grabbing into the floor. I'm creating this wedge. As I drive that spring down, as I sit down, and then from this position, that spring will help drive me back up. Same as our lunges. I've got that bag in the front loaded position now, creating tension. When I'm ready to step back with my right leg, it's my left foot that needs to be driving into the ground. And for a little extra spring, I'll load up, I'll coil up through my thoracic spine so I can drive through that spring there. Pushing down, rising back up, pressing overhead. If I've got my kettlebell, how many times do I see people, number one, loosely hanging onto the bell? Well, there's no tension here. Grab tight onto that handle. Now all of a sudden I can feel my lat working behind me. Load up on that spring. There it is. Now as I drive, creating that wedge in my feet, pressing, packing into the ground, my spring then, sprungs, load, coil that spring, get that sling ready, and then drive through. Load up on that core. Make sure we're utilizing the physics of human movement through those springs, through those slings, through those levers, all the good stuff that we've been provided to help us be stronger, to be more resilient, and to be safer in our movement. So, exercise and sports scientist, Corey Kripe, you're welcome.